Good evening. I wanted to do a follow-up video of Norembega and where I think it actually is. It's a mythical Viking city from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, purportedly in Nova Scotia, and it's a grand city of gold, and I don't think that part's real, but I think what they're doing is they're alluding to a much more humble but very important and very secret location. Okay, so I'll just wanted to show you two interesting things. Melbourne generally is the centerpiece of all of this. Okay, and there is a very interesting map. I mentioned this in previous videos. This is a lesser known map from apparently 1830s, and the original name of this place is Nurem of Port Phillip, which is the main port leading into Melbourne, and that is your Yarra River, and that's the opening to the Yarra River. You've got Williamstown. I don't know what that is, but that's there. That's an important point. I'll come back to that. And that's Melbourne. So that's the opening for the Yarra River. And in all this mythology and all this secret society stuff, you got to think of water and that kind of thing. Now, the original name for Port Phillip was apparently Nerm, N-E-R-M, which I think is not how you pronounce it. Usually with these schwa sounds, like the inverted E in phonetics, you would possibly, and you get this in Hebraic and Phoenician, where you only have consonants, and so you have to, I'm assuming that quite often when there's no consonant, you should just use a schwa, which is just an sound. So I would pronounce that Nurum. So Nurum, and there you're in Nurum already, but this is Nurum, or maybe it's not, maybe this is Nurum, the mouth of the river. Let's just think about this for a second. So we have, from Norembega, I think we have one part, but where's the Bega? Bega. Okay, so just go back to the map. I'm doing this live, I'm not going to edit it. Bega. Okay. All right, so Bega is all the way over here compared to Melbourne. It's quite a way. Bega is a lovely town near the ocean. It's famous for cheese, cows, and it's quite a nice spot. But it's all that way. Now, what's particularly interesting here is that you have the famous Ben Boyd Tower. Right, and the Ben Boyd Tower is apparently from the 1800s and something, but people think it's actually Portuguese, whatever that means. So there's, you can see the image right there. There it is on the left. Okay, so that's probably of maybe the 15th or 16th century, say 15th or 16th, I don't know. But it's of that era. You'll get towers similar to that. And I think you've got the Tower of Hercules. It's similar. It's that kind of construction, late Renaissance. And it's right here. So that's the Ben Boyd Tower, which is probably, you could call it Portuguese, but Portuguese is a sort of a made-up term from 1492 per se. You could just call it Galatian or Galician or Spanish or whatever you want. Okay, so we need to go back to Bega. So we got Nurum, and we got Bega, which I'm assuming means, it doesn't have a good etymology, nor does Nurum, but what I think Norembega means, the actual word originally, most likely means Norem, like Nuremberg. So Norem would be north or of the north, and Norem, so people of the north, I guess. Bega would be like Berg, like so town or a hill city. So this should be up north, and it should be a Viking hill fort or something, like Edinburgh, which is Odin's Berg, but it's not. It's Nuremberg, so it's the Berg of Nurem, or the Berg of the Norse, or the Berg of the northern people, or something. That's what I think it means. But what they've done is they've broken it up into two distant locations, and why I think this is done deliberately is because of the famous mahogany ship. There's a site here that talks about this famous mahogany ship, which was a Portuguese shipwreck from the 1500s or very late 1400s that was found and this is a site Flagstaff Hill. They have put the location of this mahogany ship, which historians say never was there, but it definitely was there because it's referenced many times, in a place called Warrnambool. Not sure the etymology of that. So researchers have placed this exactly here, west of Warrnambool. Get some perspective of where that is. So Warrnambool's here, Melbourne is here, and Bega's over here. All right, now, just to get some idea of what's going on in this area, going back to the early 1800s, Melbourne was apparently founded in 1835, though I doubt that a lot. I would say that it was being settled by all sorts of people just prior to that. Gold was discovered in Ballarat, which is here, and Bendigo here, particularly Bendigo. The Ballarat is the scene of the famous Eureka Stockade, the last stand of the free-loving people, I guess. Okay, so this is what you do, right? This is why I think it all connects in a bizarre level. You have over here the Ben Boyd Tower, and then you have Bega, which fits up with the word Nurm or Nurem, so Norembega, place of a great city of gold. And people that are into the revisionist history community will realize that some cities are probably older than we're told. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick landmarks. This is particularly interesting when I go down to absolute detail. So we're going to Bega itself, where the word comes from. We're going to find one of the most important locations, and I've tried to play around with a few, and there is a war memorial with an obelisk, and I think that that's particularly important. So what I might do, I'll do it on this map, sorry. Okay, so okay, just go straight there, do it myself. All right, at the one near the swimming pool is an obelisk, and I usually will go for that as a marker. So Bega has a few of them. So one of them is about here. I'll just go with that for now. It's about here, sorry. So just going to do it live right in front of you. So measure distance. All right, but take it right away over here. Okay, and we're going to try to measure distance to that point that I showed you before, which is not here, but closer to here. So let's just double check that. So I should put the coordinates in, but I'm too busy stuffing around, sorry. Okay, so just below that. Okay, great. All right, so just below here. So it's about here somewhere. There's probably a marker down here that you know, like a rock or something. Anyone that lives there, maybe, you know, somewhere about here. Okay, so that's 685.5 kilometers. So let's type that in. And so we know 685. Okay, great. All right, now we got what I find interesting about. So that's from the ship all the way to the Bega Park, but where's Norem? Okay, this is where it gets particularly interesting. So I was going to go to the mouth of that particular river of Yarra, which is where the most significant part. You're not going to have any spiritual significance but a big body of water as much as you'll have about something more special. This is particularly interesting when you get into mythology and the Lady of the Lake and the man and the woman and the two parts of the city and all these sort of mysterious things. Once you get around to this part, now just to let you know, when I drew that line, I should have showed that line zooming out. Right, when you do a direct line, this is through slightly inaccurate Google Maps. This line here passes directly, line of sight, right across the entrance to Yarra. Right, to keep that in mind, absolutely spot on across the entrance to the Yarra River from Port Phillip. Okay, so Yarra would have its own mystical meaning, and so that was originally called Nurm. So you're getting the picture now. Now let's just get the dimensions going. All right, now if you go down, zoom in, there's a special lake. This is sort of should it give you a sort of a clue? You've got a lake that's apparently a rose lake or something. So let me just get rid of that and that. All right, so that's apparently like a rosewater lake or pink lake. It's like has some special feminine significance. And I couldn't get a good enough dimension from that. I wasn't happy with that because it wasn't absolutely spot on. But there is a site near here that's pretty much right on the line of sight. And it's going to be the Newport War Memorial in this case. Okay, so let's go straight to that right on the button. And we've got 456.74 kilometers. 456.74. All right, now it may or may not be coincidence. Let's just see if we got a good match. Okay, so we have 450. Sorry, we've got 456.74 divided by 685.5, and that should equal. Okay, so that's pretty much bang on, exactly 2/3 the distance, a ratio of 2 to 1. So that's that's extremely spot on. That's like at the mouth of the Yarra River, where going to what's called the Norembega. That's an actual war memorial. We've just done the dimensions in real time, and I think that so we've got a 2 to 1 ratio. So then what that means is that the distance Bega to Yarra is twice Yarra to ship, to the mahogany ship. Okay, great. So that's quite peculiar. I think that's interesting. Now, I've been playing around with all the dimensions. So we know there's a 2 to 1 ratio, and what we're going to do now is just leave that point for a moment. I'm going to rebuild this point back to where it was. It's going to be rough now because I don't think the people back then had exact measuring instruments, so we've got to give them a bit of slack. If there's a slight percentage error, which looks like it's only 1% so far. Let's see where we've got to go. About here. Okay, great. All right. Okay, so that's line of sight. Now what we need to do is we need to do another dimension point using this line of sight, and I want to go 90 degrees that way. But this time I'm going to do 50% again. So this is how I think the logic is. So you've got a long distance there, half the distance there, but I'm going out directly here at even half the distance again. So I want to go out at exactly. So we want to do 685. So let's just do the calculator. Let's do that. So okay. So we want to do 685.5 minus 456.74 equals 228. You want to divide that by 2 because I think there's a pattern here of going half to half to half, as if you've got it's like it's a magic map where you find 2 points, then you got to go out half what you found and half again and whatever, some crazy thing like that. So is just go that divided by 2 equals, so we have to do 114.38 kilometers. So of course back then they would have used either megalithic miles or imperial miles. Anyway, moving along. Okay, it's 114.38, and I'm going to have trouble finding this, making it 90 degrees, so pardon me if I don't get it quite right. I'm just going to do line of sight. So we're going to do here. Now the kilometers are going to be really wonky as we try to play around with this. Okay, we'll just do that. So we got to that, and so it's 912.85. All right, so I've made a false point. Okay. Now we need to go from that point out. We need to do roughly at right angles as best as we can. I don't have the degrees and don't have the calculations, but 912.85 plus 114 is It's 1026.85, so 1026.85. So 26, something. It's about that, right? Now let's just see if you've got a good line of sight of 90 degrees. It's about right. You can play around with this yourself. Where do we get to? We get to this reservoir, which doesn't have much going for it. But you got to think about how people would have found gold back in the day. They would have found it in rivers, and they would have worked their way backwards to the seam. Right? So they found it somewhere, and then they worked backwards from where the water flowed. I think that's how you did it. But you know, if you think there's other ways to do it, great. Just type in gold mine, and you've got all the principal gold mines are in this area. This is your gold mine triangle of the initial founding of the gold rush in the 19th century, and there's a second one up near Bathurst, which is way up here in this part of the world. And near Bathurst is a place called Ophir or Offa, which is the legendary Solomon's mine thing. So there's some kind of connection there. That's also that. So what I found here is that if I just did this exercise and did it again, I'm in the heart and a body of water, which has usually spiritual significance, and this would have been where they could have panned for gold long enough in order to derive where the gold mines are. And I'm assuming that anyone who knows anything could look at all the river flows and would have worked out this would have been probably a collection hub, so that you wouldn't mine for gold here, but obviously you could. That's where it sort of ends up, I guess, and then you can see where it comes. People who know more would elaborate. Okay, so to me that's pretty clear. Now, just to make it even more strange, if you would like to, this is where it gets possibly a little glitchy in the logic, and is that if you then say, well, okay, there's got to be something 90 degrees south, possibly half again of that distance. But what happens when you do that, you end up in somewhere where there is no water or magic, anything that in like a war memorial. But what you may do is you'll get something called, and this is particularly interesting, just a little bit off whack, and possibly I'm doing this so high level that I'll never figure it out, but roughly about, not quite in ratio to any of the other dimensions, but pretty much bang on, you'll get either marker 1, there's a 1 marker, and there's a 2 marker of the original inhabitants, which is practically line of sight and practically 90 degrees to this line, and will feed you straight up if you go the other way, the same ratio. So basically what I'm saying is that this is a 2-to-1 ratio, but if you then half this ratio and go that way, directly 90 degrees, you end up in the center. So what I'm thinking is that Norembega is a quiet reference where they tipped you off into how to find out the location of the gold prior to the Galatian collapse of the former cultures, like literally the Galician people, for example, certainly the Radhanites, who were Jewish traders, the Chola Empire of India. These fell to other powers, and they probably would have found ways to keep some of their secrets, but not all of them. And I think this is a little bit of a way for them to keep secrets. Now, this is what's very important about old maps. You need to remember this, but old maps up to about 1798, what was very peculiar, every old map had from this point here, pretty much exactly here, down to here, was always uncharted, and this was uncharted. From here, sorry, I should get this out of the way. Okay, it was always uncharted from about here down to here, and uncharted from here under here, just be a straight curve on the map, but then it'd be charted normally. And I think that's deliberate because this is a no-go zone or no-fly zone. I also think from a governance point of view, before the British took over, there was a line down through here that went directly here, and roughly this area was Portuguese and this was Spanish under some old treaty of 1490 something. But what happened then is that the Dutch inherited this component, and the Spanish would have retained this. The Spanish had their headquarters in Manila in the Philippines, and all of their records are destroyed. They would have had trading networks from the 1500s onwards, or through here, where we wouldn't have known about it, most likely through some of the early settlements here, most likely all the way down here. In fact, some of my ideas that there's Galatian language remnants in some of the indigenous languages, as well as other Galatian. When I mean Galatian, I mean like Portuguese. I don't think it's Portuguese. I think it's more Hispanic, broader Hispanic. So I think that the Spanish had patents. So if you wanted to do mining here and before the British, you would have needed to get approval from the Spanish from Manila. That's my guess, and that's probably why that Governor Philip had to, or not Governor Philip, but it's another governor after that had to introduce a Spanish coin, because they couldn't print money, so they had to take a Spanish coin and they had to pop out the center of it and make a hole, the holy dollar, and they used Spanish coins, most likely because Spanish coins was a currency of this area. It was probably sparsely populated, but the Spanish probably had some idea what was going on, and there are records of Dutch taking Aboriginals to Manila for trade. So I think Norembega, I can pretty much prove that this is Norembega more than anything else. Got any other comments? That'd be great, and thanks very much.